Let's choose a hypothesis test to use with this problem. A previous study showed that 38% of families with children under the age of 18 ate dinner as a family at least 6 nights a week. A school board wants to know if this is true for their school district. They randomly sampled 48 families and found that 43.75% of them ate dinner as a family at least 6 nights a week. There are a lot of numbers in this problem. To figure out what type of test we should use, we need to look more closely at what role each of these numbers is playing. The words, "they randomly sampled 48 families," is telling us that we have one sample with a sample size of 48. No other words in this problem are telling us that there's any other sample. So we should consider using a one proportion z-test or a one sample t-test. By looking at other words that appear around the numbers, we see that the number 18 is clarifying what we mean by children. That is, children under the age of 18. So this number is simply being more specific about what population we're talking about. Families with children who are under the age of 18. So as long as we're consistent that we're talking about this population, we don't need to pay too much attention to the number 18 for the rest of the problem. The same goes with the number 6. That's clarifying what the variable was. That the researchers asked families, do you eat dinner as a family at least 6 nights a week? The two numbers that are left are percentages. So those tell us that we're testing a percentage, a proportion, or probability. That means that we should consider using a one proportion z-test or a two proportion z-test. When we combine this with the information we had earlier, that we're testing one sample, this additionally says that we're testing a claimed percentage of 38%. So we should consider a one proportion z-test. This does have the problem of increasing our risk of type 1 error if that previous study that the problem mentions wasn't based on essentially an entire population. But because we weren't given a sample size about that previous study, we don't have much choice but to assume that this is a claimed value or a study that was based on a very large sample, essentially an entire population. So we can use a one proportion z-test. Next, we need to check the validity conditions. Recall that the validity conditions for a one proportion z-test are that there should be at least 10 successes and at least 10 failures. In this problem, we were told that they randomly sampled 48 families and found that 43.75% of them ate dinner as a family at least 6 nights a week. We need to figure out the number of successes, that is, the count of how many people said they ate dinner as a family. So we need to take 43.75% of 48. Converting 43.75% into a decimal, we have 0.4375, and we multiply that by the sample size of 48 to get 21 successes. We can find the number of failures by subtracting the sample size, 48, minus the number of successes, 21. So we get that there were 27 failures, or people who said they didn't eat dinner as a family. Both the number of successes and the number of failures are at least 10. So a one proportion z-test is appropriate.